Happy Friday. I am out for my daily walk with the dog out in nature. And I don't want this to be a long video, but a short one. I just want to ask a question and for you guys to just think about it. Why do we teach worldwide, for the most part, all across the board, religious, political, culture, the whole human culture, why do we continue to teach our innocent children that happiness has to be earned and that your value has to be earned? You know, you're not going to be as important in society if you don't get an education. You're not going to be a good person unless you go to church and live by the rules of whatever church you're following. Why do we have to defend those ideas? And why do we fear and teach fear of anything other than what we think will provide happiness? You know, Sigmund Freud, can't remember the name of his last book, but he talked about this, that ultimately all we are seeking is happiness and love. What I question is, why don't we feel like we can just have it? You know, why do we feel like I have to get married and have children to be happy? I have to get good grades to be happy. I have to, the list goes on. Whatever. I want you to think about what you're using as a carrot that you're chasing to be happy. And ultimately, if what you believe is happy, or what you believe you have to earn to be worthy of happiness, if something gets in the way, let's say you think you have to be the best in the class to be happy. Well, what if someone else comes to your class and just is naturally gifted and talented and is smarter than you, and they're the best in the class, right? How ultimately, by that belief in being the best in the class, how does that serve you in terms of your happiness? Because, it's very conditional. And anything that threatens it, whether it's passive threat, meaningless threat, or aggressive threat, meaning someone believes the same thing and they got to push you over to gain it, right? How does that ultimately make you unhappy? That belief in itself creates unhappiness. Like, saying I have to have the best body, I have to have a thin body, I have to have a muscular body, I have to have a fit body, I have to have a body that's capable of running marathons, I have to have a body that's capable of having visible muscle. How much of our culture in America, in the world, has placed a bizarre carrot in front of us, especially women, about happiness and the concept of beauty and sexuality. And for those men out there, how much pressure for our boys do we put on making money? Being the best, being the tallest, having the biggest dick, it's crazy. It's just so bizarre that we as humans do that, fighting for a pecking order within ourselves, thinking that we're going to get happiness if we're at the top. And ultimately, is that belief system serving humanity? There's a big difference between wanting to be the best and wanting to improve upon humanity. There's a difference in context. So how much of your underlying discontent and unhappiness, in fact, Sigmund Freud used the word discontent, underlying discontent that he found within himself and he found within other humans. And he ultimately said it was a battle you will never win. You can obviously tell why he committed suicide. I totally understand that because that's how I felt. right before I went through my out-of-body kind of near-death experience. That's what I believed. Believe there's no hope for this. And at 19, life is seriously not even worth it because there is no hope for happiness. It's been stolen by religion. That was what it was for me. Jesus stole it. I couldn't even use Jesus to pull me out because the belief around him was so conditional and so hateful that I couldn't even consider God and Christ in the help from my depths of hell. So, what I learned is that happiness ultimately, because that was my goal of choice when I chose to stay, happiness was what I wanted in my next life, whether it be in this body or my next body or whatever, that I was going to seek happiness. And honestly, the reason why suicide was such a wonderful option and was so beautiful thing, I still see death as actually a beautiful thing. The reason why it was is because my life here on earth, based on the context of unforgiving nature and control, and the fact that our religion had hijacked Jesus and made him conditional and hateful and ignorant. I mean, I could keep on going. But that there was no hope. If Jesus was an angry, mean person who was hateful against all people and unforgiving, then why would there be any chance for me, right? That was the most important piece of my youth. So if that most important piece was broken, then nothing could fix it, right? Because you were supposed to believe that, Jesus fixes things. He didn't. Not in my belief system that I was taught. Anyway, so, the choice to stay was with the goal that I wanted to be happy, and I didn't want to have such extreme conditions. In fact, in order to start over, I kind of had to release my soul from the bondage of condition to be happy. And I remember the moment I realized, I don't even know if I realized it at the time, it just happened. It was an awakening without intelligence. There was no knowledge of how it happened or what it was, but I can look back now and piece it together with my, I'm 36, so I can piece it together with the wisdom of a 36-year-old's intelligence and at least vocalize it. But at 19 and 20 years of age, I didn't know it. What 20-year-old can speak this language? Unless, you're gifted. And I'm certain there are people there, and I certainly hope my children are open-minded enough to expand beyond my own mind and limits as of today. So, the question is, can you, on a piece of paper, write down your true beliefs around happiness and what limits, what you have to attain to achieve happiness? Look at this. This is unbelievable. Well, it rained, so it's kind of full, much more full today. Isn't that gorgeous? And it goes all the way this way. It's kind of, I don't know if you could see that. But yeah, what beliefs are you using, and were they taught to you, and who taught them to you, and why would they teach them to you, and how much vigor was behind the teaching? How much seriousness was behind the teaching that you have to have perfect grades or you have to have a perfect body? Why would they instill that type of belief, and what were they lacking to make them believe that you had to earn it with such desperation? Consider the desperation behind what you're seeking. And if you could release yourself from the bondage of that and release yourself from the idea that it has to be perfectly done, what's the truth? What is the truth of being happy? And from all the science, happiness actually comes from your brain, right? It is a matter of chemical balance in the brain. Why have you ever considered that maybe there are beliefs that control that release, that you have a state of consciousness, awareness, and that your thoughts and what you believe with truth, the amount of truth you put into a belief, that might be hijacking your brain's capacity to create its own stimulus of happy. And if you can kind of hear that and go, wow, never thought of it that way, maybe I should rethink my beliefs. The problem one of the problems with that concept is that many people have an identity wrapped around a belief system. So if they were to take away the belief system, it would challenge their identity. What does that tell you, honestly, about the truth of that identity? If a belief system, it only encapsulates a belief system, and you take the belief system away, and the identity isn't there anymore, that's a sign that it's not real, that it's fake, it's a lie, that you've been bamboozled, whatever you want to call it. So that would be my thought for this Friday, this weekend. What controls have you wrapped around happiness? And ultimately, if you were free to be happy from birth, my children have, if I can teach them the art of thinking, okay? Truly, the art of thinking. You have no idea. I always say that. I need to change that vocabulary. I see people withholding happiness from themselves all the time voluntarily. And the crazy thing is they blame everything but the beliefs that are withholding the happiness. And they can't see it, and that's understandable. Because it's kind of unconscious. Because you trust and you believe your beliefs as if they are true. So if you believe your beliefs are true, you're not going to question them. And if your beliefs that you think are true, you have entangled your identity. I am this, and it is true, right? You're not going to question it. Because to question it means that it might be false, which means you're going to have to start over. That's going to feel like a very vulnerable environment. And if you let go of those beliefs, you might find out that your truth conflicts with the identity that you took on, that you don't actually truly from the heart believe in those conditions. You don't believe them. Yeah, okay, there we go. I'm sorry. That looks better. Open your mind. Expand your consciousness here, people. Get rid of those conditions and then accept the truth, no matter how vulnerable and scary, and no matter what the potential of change that they bring. And fear, fear of being rejected, abandoned, judged, criticized. I have to tell you, the most important part of my life today is that I am willing to be judged and criticized by those people who are still conformed. And I don't have to defend myself, and I don't have to judge them back, because I was them once. I was so critical and ignorant. How ignorant can a 19-year-old be? Oh, so ignorant that she's willing to kill herself. I totally get it. And they just need unconditional love, and they need to experience what it feels like to have unconditional love and happiness, and to see people who have happiness that don't follow rules, or that their rules are intrinsic. Like I have boundaries for sure, but there's intelligence and truth backing how I create boundaries for myself and how I create my own bearings and how I navigate my life and my feelings and my desires, and how open I am to making mistakes. I'm willing to take risk to expose my weaknesses and where I need to learn and grow in order for me to better myself. It's a very expansive way of thinking, rather than don't go in vulnerability, because the sin of it will doom you to hell. The permanence of that is permanent, right? That was Satan's plan. If any of you have that kind of education, that was Satan's plan. So, the other thing I want to just finish this off with is how much, if you're not allowed to live in the real world, and you are taught to fear reality, and you are taught to judge reality, fear it, and put it down and beneath you, reality, right? How willing are you going to be then to live in reality? You're probably not going to want to expose yourself to it because you're so judgmental of it. And if you go in it and live in it, then you are prone to feel guilty and shame. So that is how we get a skewed sense of reality, by denying reality, creating a false perfect reality. What is perfect and what is ideal? Let's create an ideal. And then we teach it, and we teach abuse of anything that's in reality. And our children become just as warped. They are, in essence, not understanding reality from within it. So you are making weaker someone's ability to navigate in reality by not exposing them to it. And ultimately, when you make someone weaker to be capable of navigating in reality, you are making them vulnerable to the most dangerous aspects of reality. This is similar to me saying you need to learn your body's hunger. You need to learn and discern your body's reaction to food, and you need to learn how your body reacts to a variety of food and how your body reacts to the menstrual cycle. And you need to learn that so you can discern your body in a variety of environments. What happens when you take someone and you completely remove a vulnerability is they don't learn how to eat that food. They don't learn how to respond to it. If you remove them from it and then say, this is bad, this is shameful, this is harmful, it's bad, bad, bad. You're basically teaching fear of it and avoidance of it, which enables them weak to not understand it. So when they have it, they are flailing, they have no idea what they're doing, and on top of that, they're feeling such intense shame and guilt about it that they are becoming what they fear. They're binging on it. And the funny thing is we do not look at the beliefs around fear, manipulation through fear, avoidance through fear, as the cause of why people struggle with what they're fearing. I just want you to think about it. Just think about that concept, And if the goal here is to be able to navigate in balance and understanding, you're going to have to be willing to take the risk to understand something from within it. If you don't understand from within, you're trying to understand from without, and your understanding is extremely shallow. It's only on the outside. It's not from the inside. All right, this has gone about 10 minutes longer than I wanted to. So have a great weekend. Peace and love. I'm back. I just want to also, while I'm still out here in this amazingness, I want to also note that when I talk about kind of the fear motive behind, teaching, really what you're trying to do with the ideals, by creating ideals and fears of anything other than the ideal, is you're trying to condition the carrot of happiness. You will be happy when you are happiest with these ideals, and these ideals and beliefs are true. They make you happy. How does that repeated information over time hijack the brain's capacity to create happiness? It's like a drug. It is like an addiction. This is the only route to happiness, and we are going to repeat it, and we will tell you what it means, and we will excuse me. There's a bunch of webs. We will reward you so that you feel happiness. We're going to reward with food, with spirituality. We're going to reward sex with spirituality. We're going to reward whatever it is, grades. I'm going to put you on a pedestal and make you feel like you're better than everybody else. That will make you happy enough to attain the limits that we describe is your carrot for happiness. And as I just said previously in that last blip, your brain gets hijacked by the belief system that you do not question. You believe it is true. If you were to question the belief's truths, that would mean that you are willing to risk the brain's conditioned dopamine narcotic response through addiction, through that only route to happiness, that means you're willing to give up happiness. I'm going backwards, so I don't recognize the trail. I know I'm on the trail, but when you go backwards on it, it doesn't look the same. So I'm wondering if that made sense to you. So if you have, let me repeat it, if you have conditioned your beliefs and you have been conditioned to believe the beliefs around how to gain happiness are true, and your brain believes your thoughts, right? Your brain was just hijacked by the beliefs. And you will obsess with that belief. You will preach the belief. You will try to convince and proselytize the belief to others that you can achieve happiness through this system or this program. It's a programming. And we are going to program your brain to achieve happiness with this ideology. And don't question it because it's true, right? We have proof to back it. It is true. You will feel the sense of spirituality or, freedom and safety. But if you leave this program, you will be doomed to unhappiness forever. Apply that to your religion. Apply that to your politics. I mean, how much fear-based shaming, anger, and judgment about beliefs, others' beliefs that you don't know from within. You only know them from without because you're hearing it from TV or are you just blindly believing it's true and then spewing your venom on everybody who believes other than that, whether they're the same as you but on the opposite side, or they're truly believing their beliefs from experience within. Has your brain been hijacked? Has happiness been hijacked by a belief system that you never question? You're not willing to question. There's so much fear around losing that only thing you have for happiness that you're willing to be unhappy everywhere else in the world. You're willing to judge everybody else. You're willing to isolate yourself from experiencing life because you're so afraid to leave the program and their beliefs because they have indoctrinated you to be fearful, judgmental. They take your identity and they warp it into an identity. I honestly believe this had to have started. This belief has to have been started by a body of people who knew that they could manipulate you if they could hijack the happiness part of the brain. I don't know if anybody really got it, but they knew it worked through themselves and through conditioning. Let's provide a positive reinforcement and then tell them what they have to do to get that positive reinforcement. And if we use something like life and death, it'll be even more manipulating, more controlling. We can really get them to do what we want if we impose the emotion of life and death and security within it. That is like hijacking your brain, your happiness. In essence, that's addiction. And you're hearing that from someone who learned addiction from within. I know what it feels like. And I now at this point can go into my head because it recalls the whole process. It recalls my childhood. I recall being in it. I recall how it felt. I recall all of my thoughts and feelings. And I recall everything involved with that. And I can now see where this is lining up for me, And much of it lined up with the fact that the most dooming thing, and I will bring back Jesus Christ and why he was so angry. He was angry and hateful in relation to sex. If you have premarital sex and any sexual sin, you are doomed. It is no different than murder, okay? That belief and that, and the funny thing is I love my parents so much, but they had a child out of marriage, and they had 10 children, 7 of which were girls. Oh my gosh, I totally get it. I think it's funny. Now that I look back, I think, oh my God, my parents are hilarious. They're trying to keep our legs shut by telling us that Satan will get in our crotch if we open them, right? I think it's just so funny because now my parents are so sexual. And now I see why they were scared. I mean, look at this. Damn, yep. You know what I mean? It's like really hilarious. But I took it serious and I took it as truth. I didn't realize that the pressure my parents had behind it was to not really, my father's issues with his side of the family for sure, the shame, the guilt, the addiction type thinking, right? The perfectionism, you cannot fail, you cannot fail, you cannot fail. And my mom's identity with the religion, she didn't want to disappoint her mother, which I get too. I love my grandma Ingersoll, but seriously, old school, mentality. So I know I'm digressing, but seriously, the big picture here as I'm walking, I'm hearing myself, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, this is what I actually started this conversation with. Why are you chasing the carrot of happiness? And who's hijacked it and conformed your brain to think that you can only get it through one route? That's addiction. Can you see that? And if you take away the conditions, is there a more expansive and loving route to stimulating your own brain to be happy with less? Have you ever considered gratitude? The power of being grateful. What does it take to have gratitude? Well, it takes humility. It takes compassion. It takes an open mind, really, to find gratitude. And for myself, when I went insane, and in relation to having sex outside of marriage, Jesus hated me. How can I find gratitude for my life under the belief system that I thought was true and how I took it on based on my insecurity? There was no route to it. So I had to dismantle the entire belief and actually completely renew my relationship with what I believed Christ was like. And he is. And I think when I saw my mom's reaction to my death, that changed everything. That was like feeling what unconditional love and grace is about. That moment was like happiness with nothing. Because I didn't include Jesus at that moment, I realized that it isn't him that provides that. It's through his example of grace. How many examples do you see in all biblical, not just Bible, but all texts around all religions of grace, forgiveness, love, growth, not and expansiveness, and the history of war and hate and belittling and climbing to the top. It's just nuts. You don't have to be a part of it in your small world and simple world of it. You can just decide, well, do I want happiness to be only under a condition? And if it's under a condition, can you see where your need for antidepressants, where your need, if you're constantly in that state of lacking, no wonder you're going to need an antidepressant. Look what I'm doing. Whoop. Anyways, I'm gonna end with that. And all of those of you who are on antidepressants who don't know why, there's obviously chemical reasons why. So I'm not labeling everybody as an extremist zealot of any sort. But I'll tell you, at the clinic, it's a huge percentage of our patients. They come in, we got to research all the antidepressants they're taking. Huge percentage. It's enough so that I would say 95% of our patients are on thyroid meds, antidepressants, and and it's amazing how many people get off of them after they've gone through our program, or at least they need less. They need less thyroid, they need less of everything. So anyways, now I'm just BSing. So have a great weekend. Goodbye.